Good
Hi, good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, and I welcome you all to today's training session.
Thank
My name
you.
is Grace Osafo-Topic, and I'm the lead consultant for Excel HR Consult. The last time we met on this platform, we discussed the topic HR alert, preparing for the workplace of the future, and we shared very useful insights as to how, as HR professionals, we would have to step up to the plate and embrace the change that has been ushered in by COVID-19, just so we can become trusted workforce advisors of our business owners. We had a very fruitful and insightful discussion the last time, and today I'm honored to be with you again, and we are going to discuss the topic, factors to consider in developing a virtual work policy. Before we zoom into the session, I would like to especially thank Innovare for being the brain behind all these training sessions and for this platform and the opportunity given me to interact with amazing people like you. I don't take it for granted, and I must say I am very, very grateful. So for the next 45 minutes or less, I will be taking you through a journey. And on this journey, the first step will be to clarify certain terms that we are using presently at this time, and these terminologies are remote working, virtual working, and then working from home. Now, once we are on the same page on what we mean by remote working and what we mean by virtual work and what we mean by working from home, then we will take a step further to discuss the factors to consider when we are drawing a remote working policy. We will take the various steps to look at the purpose of the policy. We will look at the factors to consider when drawing the policy, and then we'll define some of the policy elements and also look at some of the legal considerations and factors that we should look at when drawing a remote working policy. After we have agreed and discussed the factors to look at when drawing a remote working policy, we then now take a deeper dive into how to guide our employees and get them started when the company or the business would like to transit from the traditional work environment to virtual or remote work. And then I will share my concluding thoughts with you. Let me state emphatically that in different parts of the world or in the developed parts of the world, most countries have already begun to experiment with virtual work and then working from home and then all that. They had done to experiment and test those practices or ways of working before the whole global pandemic set in. Okay, but in this part of the world, we are used to commuting from home to our offices to work. That has been the way of life. And even though we heard about remote working or virtual work, it was quite a challenge to embrace the entirety of it. However, currently, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, now there is a call for transition, because you and I may not know when the next global pandemic would take place. Okay, and so we have to get ourselves ready for what might happen. And also because now most businesses would still want to keep operating, yet ensure that their employees' health and safety is still protected. They will want to either gradually transit into virtual work or immediately transit into virtual or remote work. Let me also emphasize that virtual work and remote working might become the new normal. And so it is important that we brace ourselves for the change and begin to psych our minds and develop the systems and structures to support this new normal. To buttress what I said, that the whole concept or idea of virtual and remote working is quite new and in this part of the world, let me also stress that because of its newness, that is why we are currently using certain words to mean different things. So in my next slide, I'm going to clarify, okay, so we have a common understanding on what we mean by virtual work, what we mean by remote work, and what we also mean by working from home. Okay, so let's start. So I'm going to juxtapose virtual versus remote. Now, when we talk about virtual teams, okay, a virtual team refers to a group of people who are brought together to accomplish a particular project, a particular assignment, or to do a particular thing. And these people or these team members answer to different managers, okay? So it's possible to have a virtual team that is located either in the same geographical location or in different parts of the world. But all these teams are corresponding and interacting to achieve a particular business outcome. Okay. Now, if you have ever been on a task force or on a committee where the members of the team were in different areas, where you still have to collaborate in just to achieve the purpose of which that committee was established, then you have been part of a virtual team. So you can have virtual teams which are located in the same location, and you can also have virtual teams which are located in different parts of the world. Now, the distinguishing feature is that the members of the virtual team do not report to one team lead. Okay, so you can have different members of the virtual team reporting to different people in different locations. It is also possible that a virtual team may have a physical address where members of the team can come there to work, but it doesn't mean that they actually report to themselves, but just to create that place for them, or just to create that environment for them to work, just in case they want to work from a particular place other than their homes or any other remote location. So that is what virtual team means. Now, when we talk about remote work or remote teams, you're talking about people who are brought together, who work for the same company or for the same business, and usually they would report to the same team lead. Okay, so we may have remote teams that are physically present in different countries, in different cities, in different places, but have the same boss. Okay, the line of similarity between virtual and remote teams is that both leverage a lot on technology in order to get their work done. So it is almost impossible for a remote team to work efficiently without adapting to virtual work platforms. And it's also almost impossible for a virtual team to accomplish its tasks without adopting to IT platforms to be able to communicate seamlessly. So that is the line of similarity between virtual and then remote. Now let's now take a deeper dive to understand the difference between remote work and working from home. Now, remote work is the ability to work from anywhere. Okay, it means that you can work from home or any other location outside your physical office premises. Now, it is easy to define work from home as work that does not take place in a traditional office setting. Okay, so it means that you will not be driving to the same physical business place Monday through to Friday or working on an 8-hour shift. Now, if you are a remote employee, the beauty of it is that you can decide to work from home on Monday, to work from the library on Tuesday. You can decide to work from a cafeteria on Wednesday, then work from a park on Thursday, and then maybe work from a co-working location on Friday. So you have that liberty to decide which location will be convenient for you at a particular point in time. Looking at the convenience, okay, and the flexibility of working remotely, let me also state emphatically that it's to be successful at remote working, you would have to have a different set of abilities, resources, and skills. Okay, you would have to have a deep sense of entrepreneurship attitude. You would need to have a self-starting attitude, a self-disciplined attitude, and believe you me, you need to have insane levels of time management and personal management skills. It also requires that you are able to communicate so well and then focus on the on connecting and constantly interacting with your team members because you don't have the regular face time with them. And then in remote working, you are able to create your own working environment that meets your taste and preferences. Now, when we talk about working from home, okay, working from home is a temporary situation. Okay, the difference between remote working and working from home is that remote working is simply a way of working, whilst working from home is considered a benefit. Okay, so for example, my name is Grace and I work for Excel HR Consult. And as part of my working conditions, I have the privilege or I have the benefit of working from home maybe once a week. Okay, so tomorrow is Friday, and so I can decide that, okay, I do not have any in-person call tomorrow. I do not have any client meeting tomorrow. I would want to change my working environment. So I'll take my laptop and use my kitchen table as my work desk tomorrow. That is working from home. Okay, it doesn't mean that I no longer work in my physical office space. It means that I am benefiting from the working conditions that I enjoy as the lead consultant of Excel HR, where I have the flexibility of being able to work from home maybe once a week. So then after clearly understanding what the working from home is and what virtual work is and what remote work is, I'm sure that we are on the same page, and so we can now go deeper into the crux of our conversation this afternoon. Let me also state that for the purpose of this training, I may be playing on words between virtual work and working from home and remote work, because the factors for drawing a remote work policy or a work from home policy or a virtual work policy, those factors are the same. And so I may be playing on words as we go along. But I'm sure that I have successfully clarified and demonstrated the differences between the three, just so we are on the same page. Now, let us now go to our remote work policy. Now, talking about policy, I'm sure that if there are HR professionals on this call, we would be so excited because in practice and by training, we are taught that every action and every decision that we take in our working environment should be guided by policy. And so it is not out of place that we are discussing how to draft a virtual work policy this afternoon. Let me refresh our minds a little on the importance of policies. Now, a policy is a guide to the actions and decisions of members of a particular company. Okay, so there are statements of conduct that tells us how we should act in certain specific circumstances. Now, policy is a major tool for human resource management, okay? And it is always incumbent on the HR department to develop policy and procedure statements to help managers and team leads at all levels to administer the employee terms and conditions. And so we know that if the company or the business is looking at adapting to the changes and want to transit either immediately or gradually towards virtual or remote work, then we are supposed to have guiding principles to help us manage expectations of all the stakeholders. Now, why do we need a remote work policy? What is the purpose? Okay, the first step in looking at the factors to consider in drawing a remote work policy is to first of all determine the purpose of that policy. So what is the reason behind we even wanting to draft a remote work policy in the first place? So there could be a number of reasons. Now, the first of them may be to set out the guidelines and expectations for employees who work from other places outside or other than the traditional working environment. And we also want to ensure that our policy is compliant with the labor law and all other employment rules and regulations. And then also we would want to ensure clarity and mutual understanding between all the stakeholders of our remote working policy. And also when our policy is designed, drafted, approved, and becomes a document, then it means that we can easily refer to it, and then it also becomes a tool for fairness in the administration of punishment or rewards, okay? And then it also ensures that the employees clearly understand the terms and conditions of their remote work. Now, the second step to consider in the factors to look at when drawing a remote work policy, there are some critical points that you would have to look at. I'm very sure that on this call, there are different people who work in different businesses and in different sectors or industries, okay? And the factors that I'll be sharing with you this afternoon may not be cast in stone. You would have to properly contextualize it just so that it would reflect your specific company, your specific industry, and to fit into the needs of your business, so I can support the growth of your business. So you would have to examine all these critical points. Your virtual work policy should be tailored to the position and the needs of the company. Now, the best way to get started on drafting your company's virtual work policy is to properly consult and then collaborate with all the relevant internal stakeholders. So in this case, we're talking about your management team, your HR team, legal team, and all other stakeholders who might be very well interested and can advise you and give you the necessary support and guidance in drafting your virtual work policy. Also, to be sure that you are on the same page and you are legally compliant, and also that your virtual work policy is strategic enough to support your business growth and success, you might want to run your policy, or you might want to outsource it to companies like Excel HR Consult, who are well versed in remote work strategies. So you may want to make a decision between the two. Now, the third step is to specify categorically what virtual or remote working means in your particular company. Okay, in your policy write-up, you would have to indicate what is the operational definition for virtual work to me. How does my company or how does my business see virtual or remote work? Now, in Excel HR, for example, we define our remote working as a permanent or temporary agreement between employees and employees, where they can decide to work from a non-office location and for like 7 days. So any work that you do outside your office location for less than 7 days is not considered as remote working. But if you work outside the office for more than 7 days, that is considered as remote working. So you have to contextualize for yourself and operationally define for your business what remote or virtual work means. And then you would also want to indicate the types of virtual working agreement that you would want to be seen in your company. Okay. You could decide that in your company you could have permanent or temporary virtual working agreement. And a permanent virtual working agreement means that you have hired a full-time remote employee whose primary work location is outside the physical office. And then for the temporary remote working agreement, you can say that based on certain factors, certain employees may be given the freedom or may be given the opportunity to work outside the business, the physical business address. So you could think for your business the factors or the reasons why an employee could be given that opportunity to work out from outside the traditional office space. And such reasons could be that maybe that employee is taking care of maybe a sick spouse or a sick child or a sick parent, or maybe that employee is not well, or maybe the employee has moved from where he was living to a new location. So whatever reasons that you think may apply to your particular business setting, you would want to indicate it appropriately in your virtual work policy. Now, you would also want to look at the factors. Okay, so right now we're on the step 4. You would also want to look at the legal factors. because as HR practitioners, we understand that the employer-employee relationship is governed by legal terms and conditions. And we know that the Labor Act is our best friend, and we would always refer to it when making decisions, just to be sure that we are legally compliant. And so, similarly, in drawing our remote work policy, we would have to go back to the Labor Act, know what is in there, and ensure that we are compliant with the provisions of the law. So we will take some of the legal factors or the factors to consider as stated in the Labor Act. Now, when we take the Section 9A of our Labor Act 2003, Access 5.1, one of the duties of an employer is to provide work and appropriate raw materials, machinery, equipment, and tools. So how does this feed into our remote working policy? What this means is that if we are onboarding a full-time remote worker, we would have to consider a financial stipend for their stay-at-home workspace and to ensure that they have sufficient internet, desk, chair, and any other supplies that they might need to succeed. And of course, the compensation would have to be determined by the job role. Okay, and we may also want to state in our policy documents that our remote employees may receive a certain stipend or allowance to cover for office related costs, such as electricity and then rent. On the subject of equipment, we would have to indicate in our virtual work policy which equipment the company is ready or can provide per the job role. And so we may want to indicate in our policy document the kind of equipment and support that we would give to our remote employees. So we may want to give equipment or tools like laptops, headsets, cell phones, whenever applicable. And then we may want to take a step further to install the company's required software on those laptops or on those devices that our remote employees may need to work with. In our documents as well, we may want to specify the tools and equipment that we will not be able to provide. So you may want to indicate that for our remote workers, we are not going to provide you with printer, I'm not going to provide you with a projector, I'm not going to provide you with a scanner. Whatever the company may not be able to provide would have to be stated in our remote work policy document. Also, we will need to specify that the equipment that we are giving to our remote employees is company property. And in the apologies for the slide challenges. We had internet issues. So we are back and we will continue from where we stopped. So let me just give a brief recap from where I left off before the internet challenges came in. So we were discussing the remote work policy. Okay, and then I stated that the first step is to identify the purpose for, having a remote work policy in the first place. And then I mentioned that the reason why we should have a remote work policy is to set out the clear guidelines and expectations for employees who work from locations other than the traditional office environment. And I went a step further to discuss the critical points that we should look at when we are drafting a remote work policy. And I emphasized that the remote work policy should be contextualized. That is to say that it should reflect the particular company, industry, and the legal framework of the country. I then took a step further to discuss that we should specify and operationally define what virtual or remote work means in our companies, which I really explained. And then the last thing I was talking about before the internet became an issue was that we should clearly consider certain legal factors so that we can maintain the integrity of our remote and or virtual work policy. Now, on the subject of legal, I mentioned that it is the duty of an employer to provide to provide work and appropriate raw materials, machinery, equipment, and tools. And I explained that if you are onboarding a full-time remote worker, you may have to consider or indicate in the policy that you would provide a financial stipend for their stay-at-home workspace to ensure that they have sufficient internet, desk, chair, or any other supplies that they may need to succeed. And certainly, the compensation that you would give would have to be determined by the particular role and the support of logistics, which would be required for the successful performance of that job role. And on the subject of equipment, I mentioned that it is important that we indicate in our policy the kind of equipment that we will provide to our remote employees. And then I mentioned laptops, on these equipment. And then I also mentioned that we would also have to indicate in our policy documents the equipment that we will not be able to provide as a company. And such equipment may be printers, may be scanners, may be projectors. And then also when we commit these equipment in the trust of our remote working employees, we would have to indicate that they have to keep it safe and avoid misuse. Okay, so all the specific guidelines regarding the usage of these equipment has to be explicitly stated. And I mentioned that they would have to keep their equipment password protected. They would have to keep their equipment in a safe and clean place when not in use. They would also have to follow all data encryption, protection standards and settings. And like their on-site colleagues, they would have to refrain from downloading suspicious, unauthorized, or illegal programs and software. Now, still on the legal framework, okay, part of the duties of an employer, as stated in the Labor Act, is to develop the employees by way of training and retraining them. And so if the employer wants to transit from traditional working to remote or virtual work, then it is fair that you train your employees so they have the required personal competencies and skills, as well as the relevant skill set for remote work. Now, if you have the capacity to train in your own business environment, that is fine. But if you would want to outsource the training and the logistics and the tools and platforms to a company to support you with, then you may want to have a discussion with Excel HR Consult on that. Now, this training would have to let the employees know how to set up their virtual workspace, how to deal with distractions, and how to use tech platforms for communication. So on the Labor Act, okay, the Labor Act says that the employee has a right to leisure and then reasonable limitation of working hours. And so in our remote policy, we would have to specify the working hours for virtual and remote work and establish a means of virtual reporting as well as closing times and then lunch breaks. Per the Labor Act also, the employee has the right to receive every information relevant to his or her work. And so in the remote working policy document, you will have to specify clearly the channels of communication. I always say in all my training platforms that communication is the king of virtual work, because we do not see each other face to face. We need to establish clearly what the channels of communication are. And so we can clearly state that open communication channels are essential for efficient collaboration. And so for our remote workers, clear communication guidelines is very, very crucial because they don't have the privilege of meeting face to face. In our remote work policy, we would have to determine the established organizational communication channels and then also determine the specific mediums to use for which communication purposes. So we can say that for this particular campaign, we use Zoom for video conferencing and calls, but we use emails to submit our reports and for written communication. Or we can also say that in this campaign, we use WhatsApp or Skype for instant messaging. And then we could also say that we would resort to our mobile phone and make phone calls when other options are not available. As part of also the factors that we have to consider in drawing our remote or virtual work policy, we would need to institute or determine the guidelines for virtual meetings. We need to be able to specify the time limit for certain virtual meetings so we are able to control all the activities that exist in the virtual workspace. We can also determine and state that all meetings should have a specific agenda and be followed up by minutes, or we should record all our meetings just so that we can make certain decisions by referring to it. And then for our virtual meetings, just like our on-site meetings, so we establish ground rules. We would also have to establish the ground rules for our virtual meetings. So we can say that in Excel HR, for our virtual meetings, you don't have to put your device on mute, or you don't have to do something else whilst the virtual meeting is still going on. So all those ground rules would have to be specifically stated. Then we would also have to establish procedure for application of leave. Okay, so even though we are having virtual employees who do not work in the physical office space, the employment agreement backed by the Labor Act still holds. So our employees, even though not present with us, are still entitled to their leave days as enshrined by the Labor Act. So what is the process for applying for leave? And when remote or virtual employees are on leave, what are they expected to do? What is modus operandi for applying for sick leave? If an employee wants to apply for maternity leave, what is the way to go about? All the steps and guidelines would have to be stated in our virtual work policy. And then also for our work from home policies, they will have to indicate how many times in a week, in a month, or in a year that an employee can work from home, and also specify which levels of authority or role holders can work from home. Lastly, we would have to determine which reporting tools or software platforms we will use to track our deliverables. So having considered all these legal factors, we would know that our remote or virtual work policy is compliant with our labor law, and then it will be good to go. I would also want to emphasize that our remote or virtual work policy would have to follow the already existing company policies. An example of such policies are the guidelines for confidentiality, data protection, and information security. And this part of the conversation is very dear to me. This is because we are working with virtual or remote employees who have access to sensitive company data. And then they are out there, and so other people can have access to this information and can use it against our business. It's important that we set out the clear guidelines as to how our remote employees should manage and protect information and data whilst they are working outside the physical office environment. Also, we have to know that the remote employees have to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner, even though they are not working in a traditional office setting. So if they are going to engage with partners or clients, in the course of their work, they should know that they are represent our company, and so they have to conduct themselves in the highest level of professionalism as much as possible. Now, having clearly established our remote work policy and knowing all the factors that we should consider in drafting it, then I'm sure that our policy is good to go. Now, after we draft our policy, we will take it for review, we will subject it to questioning, and then we will finally have management to approve on it. Now, when that is done, then we would want to take a step further to help our employees to get started on the new way of working. And so as an HR manager, as a team leader, you would want to guide and support your employees to follow the cardinal points of virtual work. It may be something new to your employees. It could be something that they are not used to. So you would have to support them and then help them to get started. The first support that you can give to your employees is to help them to create a dedicated workspace so that they can avoid distractions and then be able to focus on their work. And then you would also want to guide and support employees to know how to act, know how to comport themselves, to know the behaviors that they should engage in when they are working virtually. And then, on the other hand, you would want to clarify and make it clear to employees what their targets are, what they are working to achieve, just so they will know how to structure and manage their time to produce results. And then lastly, we want to support and guide employees on how to start, on how to set up their start time, their stop time, and then breaks, and then also how to communicate their schedule and deliverables to their managers and then their teammates. I would want to conclude by saying that policies are very, very essential, and drawing because this whole concept of remote and virtual work is quite new in this part of the world. There is not much precedent to look up to. But that is why we have trusted companies and institutions that we can call on if we need support in this area. Let me say that HR policies and management practice would inevitably change when a workforce transitions either immediately or gradually from a traditional office environment to remote or virtual work. And as such, managers and team leads would have to gradually adjust to give up certain control and build trust among the employees. It is important that as HR professionals, we clearly understand the contextual legal implications when drafting our remote or virtual work policies, and then we are able to collaborate and work hand in hand with the managers and team leads so that we can carefully and strategically establish our remote work policy. So thank you so much for your attention. If you want to engage XLHR to support you in your remote work strategies or to train your employees on how to work virtually, you can send us an email at info@xlhrconsult.com, or you can contact us at 02071211406 or 0559967750. Thank you so much for your attention. At this point, we are open to receiving questions and comments from you. I'm very grateful for your time.
Hello, may I? Oh. Hello, may I?
Okay, hello. So we have a question from Kweku Opoku. Kweku Opoku is asking a question. He's saying that the legal framework was drafted under the context of on-site working conditions. So how does it bear fruit in an era of remote working? So Kweku, your question is very right, because the context under which the Labor Act was drafted was under the context of on-site working. However, we have transited to remote or virtual work, and it looks like our Labor Act is still not changed. I'm sure that the powers that be are considering reviewing our existing Labor Act. But all that is going on, we will still have to be legally compliant. Okay, we will still have to comply with the existing provisions that are in the Labor Act, just so we do not flout the rules and regulations. All right, so we have a question from Innovare Limited. So you're asking, why do you say working from home is a temporary situation? Some companies allow some staff to work from home as their normal work routine. All right, so I clarified that working from home is a benefit, okay? It's a temporary situation, and it is only applied when you are supposed to work from a traditional office space, but you have that added advantage to work from home on particular days or on a certain number of days in a particular week. So some companies allowing their staff to work from home as a normal work routine would be defined as remote working and not working from home.
Where? Silicon.
We have a question. We have a question from Abigail Bolu. Abigail is asking, how do we balance remote working and annual leave management? Abigail, so we still have to comply with the Labor Act provision on annual leave. So even though we might have our employees working virtually, we will still need to adhere to the provisions in the Labor Act. And then the Labor Act says that employees are entitled to not less than 15 working days leave every year. And so if no matter the system of working, whether on-site employees or remote employees, we still have to adhere with what is stated in the Labor Act until the provisions in the Labor Act is changed. We have a question from Hayford Kuma. Hayford is asking, how are HR partners relating to tax authorities in the treatment of benefits for working from home? All right, Hayford. So I explained that working from remote working is a system of working. And so whatever legal things that apply between employers and employees will still have to be the same. So if we are paying taxes or we are paying the pay as you earn on the income of our on-site employees, then we would also have to do the same for our remote working employees. It's as simple as that. Okay, so Hereford is asking another question. Hereford is saying that you indicated that working from home is a benefit because you don't have to commute. Or this refers to council transport allowance. When staff bought cars in order to commute to work, it's not their fault. Okay, Hayford. So I mentioned that working from home is a benefit, okay, because according to your part of your working conditions, you have the liberty to decide on a certain number of days that you will not work from the physical office days. And so that will not be too many days in a week. That will be like once or twice a week. And so to cancel transportation allowance entirely because you are working from home on particular days of the week, I would say it's not fair because it's just an added advantage to your work and to your role. We have a question from Kweku Opoku. Okay, so Kweku Opoku is asking, as HR practitioners, how are we able to protect the employees' data, which I see as a high risk in this regard? Okay, so if you recollect in my presentation, I mentioned that the part that is very dear to me is how remote employees is able to secure the data of their company, because the information is out there and many people who will not be stakeholders of the businesses that may have access. And so in the policy, it should be clearly stated what are the information security arrangements and how should staff protect the data of the company. And so whatever policies that are there, whatever guidelines that are there should be implemented. All right, so Vanessa is also asking, he said, the case where there's HR policy for remote working by management, but line managers are refusing to allow their staff to work remotely. What should be done? Okay, Benjamin, so like I said in my presentation, that as HR people, if you are drafting a remote working policy or any other policy for that matter, we should engage. Okay, so we have to engage our top management, have to engage our legal team, have to engage all the teams and get their buy-in before the whole draft of the policy is even done and even approved. So if their buy-in is, we get their buy-in at the initial stages, it will be difficult for them to oppose it at the implementation stage. So it's important that from the beginning, we get their buy-in from top management to the board, to the teammates, we get all of them to collaborate and then help, support the whole process from beginning to end. Does anybody else have a question or a comment? We are still open to receive more questions. In the meantime, whilst we wait for more questions and comments, I would want to share with you Innovare's offering for you. I'd like to share with you Innovare's offering for you for today. So Innovare wants to offer to you online training for human resources security. And the training goes for a cool 1,000 Ghana cedis. And if you want certification plus training, that goes for a cool 2,000 Ghana cedis. The training takes place from the 1st to 2nd of July from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I would personally recommend this training to all human resource management practitioners because human resources security is so important at this time now more than ever. You may contact Stella Toku on 02406666924 to indicate your interest and also to make payments. And you can also send Stella an email at stella.toku@innovarelearn.com. Okay, so we have some comments and questions coming in. We have a question from Alex Into. Alex Into is asking, from your experience, given the conservative thinking, do you see a change of thinking in this direction? Management embracing this change? Alex, I think that, and I'm sure that if the business wants to survive in where we don't know when the next global pandemic is going to set in, then management would have to change their thinking in this direction just for the business to be able to survive, because we'll have to think of the far-reaching effects. So if there's any disease or any sickness, that means that people may not be able to commit to work. How will the business survive? So at this point, we need to start experimenting these things so that we can be able to embrace the change when we are forced to do it at a point where we don't have a choice. Okay, so Hayford Kuma is saying, very good presentation, answer the questions. Thank you, Hayford. Koku is saying, please share the training with us in our emails. It will be shared with you. Abigail is saying, very insightful, thanks for sharing. Thank you so much, Abigail, for your comments. We still have room for some more comments and questions. Okay, so we have a comment from Victoria Gachipo. Please get the slides. Yes, you get the slides. Hereford is asking, I hope you receive the keys for this session. I'm sure that you will. In the absence of any more comments or questions, I must say that I'm very grateful to Innovare for the opportunity to share this insight with you. I appreciate you very much, all the people that joined. Okay, so before I conclude, we have a question from Godfred Amwa. Godfred is asking, how can remote working be monitored? Okay, Godfred, so remote working can be monitored using virtual working platforms. So there are lots of platforms that we can use to monitor the tasks and activities of every virtual staff, to know what they are doing, to know the updates, on their tasks. And some of these platforms are Slack, Trello, Asana. There are many platforms which for now are free, and some of the platforms are also paid for. So you may want to explore some of these tools and platforms to be able to monitor your remote employees. So thank you very much, Innovare, for this opportunity. I'm very grateful to my audience for your comments, for the questions. It's been a very interesting session with you. I wish you all the best, and feel free to contact SLH whenever you need any support to manage your remote teams. Thank you very much, and I enjoy the rest of your day.